Hello, Cannabis fam. Welcome to another fantastic episode of CannaSphere Africa, where we discuss all things happening in the cannabis industry around our beautiful, crazy, and dynamic continent. Linda, good afternoon, sir.
How's it, Trenton? How are you doing, sir?
Good. You're looking very perky today.
I am, man. I'm feeling very excited after being in the Eastern Cape, but also the awesome news that we're about to hear today, because apparently we're going to get high on fashion with Rihanna, so I'm very excited about that. And apparently there's something about a new dispensary that just opened up in Joburg, where people can potentially get their weed legally. So I'm very excited to hear about that.
Legally. Interesting. We're also going to talk about the government have apparently been behind closed doors discussing all of the feedback on the private purposes bill that was presented in Parliament a week back. The Hayes Club, the case has now been moved to November. So keen to hear more about that. It just keeps getting pushed out and pushed out and pushed out. And we're also going to be talking about Namibian legislation. So lots of things going on this week. And without further ado, let's cross over straight to Brett from the CannaSphere studio in Limpopo province. Over to you, Brett.
Good afternoon from Limpopo. In the CannaSphere news, in a groundbreaking event, Africa's first center to offer cannabis across the counter to medical patients has opened in Johannesburg. The Professor De Beer Education Center is a unique project aimed at linking doctors and patients with the approval of the Department of Health. Behind the project is Professor Ben De Beer, whose CBD Full Spectrum company is the licensed cannabis cultivator, who will be supplying the medical cannabis. To tell us more about this is the center's creator, Kyle Brockelbank. Kyle, welcome and congratulations. You must be feeling very proud.
Brett, yes, very, very proud. Thank you very, very much. I think it's a proud moment for South Africa.
So tell us, how does this work? If I think that cannabis can cure my anxiety or help my pain, and I'm interested, where do I find you and how do I go about this?
All right, cool. So we are based in Joburg, South Glenanda, 76 Foster Avenue, if you are looking for us. And what we are is an education center to help you to apply for the medicinal need for cannabis. So if you feel that you are the type of person who is interested in doing this, come down to the center. We give you all the information about cannabis, about what it is, where it comes from, how it exists to us. And then we put you on the path to acquire the medicinal cannabis card, which is actually the license that we give to you in order to be able to acquire it.
So it's not as straightforward as I can go in and say, I'm feeling anxious, give me some cannabis. Will you be actually dispensing cannabis from the premises, or how does this work?
Yes, so it's not as easy as that. You come in, we do the application for you. The application is then done via a doctor. We have a number of doctors who sit on our panel. They then phone, make appointments, discuss with the patient exactly how they feel, what it is that they're feeling, so that they can see exactly how to treat them. And then from there, they return to us at the education center, where we will have a pharmacy opening within the next 30 days, which will be able to dispense cannabis to all of our customers with the medicinal cannabis cards.
Kyle, how much does it cost?
So a lot of people are sort of worried about the cost of it, but unfortunately there is quite a few factors that are involved. It's 2,012 Rand and 50 cents inclusive of VAT. Obviously it's a government application, so we need to follow all the rules possible.
And so that would be for a 6-month prescription, do I understand?
That is correct. So how it works is you pay the fee. It includes your application to SAPRA, who is the governing body that looks after this entire operation. It covers the prescription to the doctor for your first 6 months. And it also covers the educational package behind all of this to teach you about the cannabis and to get you into the position where you can apply for it.
That's very, very exciting. Are there any more centers planned that you're looking to roll out?
Yes, there's definitely a plan to open up more centers. We are looking at definitely having one per province in South Africa, so that we can at least start to figure out exactly how many medicinal cannabis users there are in South Africa that are interested in using the product.
Well, good luck with your venture and congratulations once again. That's Kyle Brockelbank of the Professor De Beer Education Center. You heard it. It's Africa's first steps towards a legal weed dispensary on the continent. One opening in all 4 provinces, hopefully soon. In other news today, we've got Parliament's Justice and Correctional Services Committee met at the weekend to discuss the input it received from the public on the Cannabis for Private Purposes Bill. CannaSphere understands that the intention was to go through the bill clause by clause to see if it could be rescued to pass constitutional muster. The alternative is to call for the Department of Justice to draw up a whole new cannabis plan. That was essentially the call from almost all organizations who made their submissions to Parliament last week, saying a new cannabis bill should allow for the regulated adult trade in cannabis and related products. The other problem is that the Justice Department is the Drugs and Drug Trafficking Act of 1995. The South Gauteng High Court found it unconstitutional last year, yet it's still being used as a basis for cannabis convictions. We've heard that the High Court bid by the Hayes Club to get private cannabis clubs legally recognized is yet again delayed. Lawyer Andrew McPherson told CannaSphere that he's now hoping for a November court date because of procedural problems. This is the second time the Hayes Club has tried to get a court hearing this year, not only to get a stay of prosecution in its own case, but it wants the High Court to specifically allow cannabis clubs to operate. Legalization appears to be gathering momentum in neighboring Namibia. There are 2 cannabis activists there who have gone to the High Court in Windhoek to get charges against them dropped and for cannabis to be legalized. The President and Secretary General of the Ganja Users of Namibia, with the acronym GUN, that's Brian Jafta and Boro Ndungula, have filed papers in the Windhoek High Court. Their lawyer, Kadila Amuma, says they are seeking to have cannabis legalized and for cannabis prisoners to be freed. That's it from the CannaSphere legal and otherwise news desk in Limpopo. Guys, it's back to you.
So what exactly is the definition of procedural problems? That's my question, Brett. What is a procedural problem?
Okay, so we tell it straight here because we in the CannaSphere space, where we do. What I suspect, and I can't say this entirely, is that the state is actually dragging its heels on this whole thing. And they were late in filing papers for the first time. The case was meant to be heard in June. They were looking for a September court date. I know the Hayes Club is very keen to have the court case heard because it would take a huge amount of pressure off the director's head. And the lawyers are frustrating in that it seems that the state is dragging its heels, possibly because they want new legislation to be passed so that they have a guiding direction. But as we can see, it's not going to be at least another year or so before we're going to get any kind of law governing the use of cannabis because of how the Cannabis for Private Purposes Bill was so absolutely shredded at Parliament.
Yeah, I guess another word for procedural problems could also be gross inefficiency. But let's move on. Really interesting to hear from Kyle. Myself and Linda actually went to his store a few weeks ago. Really beautiful space, really nicely done, really professional. I think it's a good step forward. You know, Cuban Zulu, who's part of our matrix and one of our lecturers, was the first patient to be issued with a commercial a license for medicinal cannabis, which is incredible. So it is a step forward, but at the same time, you know, medicinal cards went out of favor many years ago in the States. So it does feel like a bit of a stalling tactic on SAHPRA's part. But really, you know, I'm inspired by what I saw at the space. And it is professional. And at the end of the day, you know, there are people who want recreational cannabis, but there are legitimate users who are still having to buy via the back door. And, you know, jumping through a bit of paperwork is probably better than having to go around dodgy corners and deal with dodgy people. So I think it's a good initiative. I just hope that it moves fast and it becomes smoother and easier. I have no idea how SAHPRA, when they can hardly deal with the administration they have, are going to deal with thousands of applications coming in. So I think it's ultimately in the long term is not something that's going to be sustainable, but a great step in the right direction.
You might have a point there, Trenton. Perhaps that is that is something that if SAHPRA is suddenly besieged by mountains of paperwork, it might force them to think that there's got to be another way to regulate this business. And also, what is the difference between medicinal and recreational cannabis anyway? The more I look for differences, the less I see. It's about the balance at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Cool. Let's go straight to Johannesburg to speak to Noxy, who's going to give us some more stuff on Canna lifestyle.
Hi guys, all the way from sunny Johannesburg. If you think cannabis art was where it ends, well, sorry, but you're very wrong. It looks like there's more creative expression coming our way. Cannabis high fashion might be just the latest big thing, with Rihanna starting the trend by recently posing in the 30th anniversary issue of Dazed magazine, dressed up as a life-size joint, holding a briefcase which we think is either filled with buds, cash, or maybe both. Stoner fashion has elevated from basic t-shirts to tote bags that remind us to buy weed from women. The Fenty founder has never ever been shy about her use of cannabis, having worn a number of weed-themed fashion pieces in the past. But as for gigantic gestures of love, such as the high fashion joint dress, I mean, you can stick that in your pipe and smoke it. What are some of the ways you've expressed your love for weed? Drop us a comment or tag Craft Cannabis TV in your favorite weed attire and show us how you express your love for weed. Back to you guys.
Yeah, I think Rihanna looks smoking hot in that joint.
Yeah, no.
So I couldn't resist that. Yeah, it's good, man. Cannabis is taking the center stage. You know, and the Americans, you know, they like to do things big. It's a big joint, and yeah, it just it normalizes things. All good.
Mm.
Do you know?
It is men's. Yes.
Yeah, that this Saturday is 3 years since the Concord ruling.
What?
3 long years.
So we.
And in many ways, we've come a long way, and in many ways, we haven't. What do you think about that, Noxy?
I think that I just wish that they would just get a move on and just get it done. I mean, I remember the excitement behind the ruling, and then now we seem to be at a place where the excitement is kind of dying down because nothing is really happening. And I know a lot of people in South Africa really need this to move fast. What do you think, Brett?
Well, parliamentarians have already missed the 2-year deadline that they were given to come up with a new piece of legislation that governed the use of cannabis. So we're still in this crazy grey area where essentially it's been decriminalized. You're allowed to consume it in your home and grow it in private, but you can't trade it in public, and you can't buy seeds. And so there are all sorts of bits of ridiculous legislation that is clearly the bill that was in Parliament was clearly crafted by a prohibitionist. They're not going to make things easier for anybody. And I think that I share the frustration. It feels like it was a groundbreaking moment when the Constitutional Court made its ruling on that September the 18th. And now all we hear is we sit around seeing that parliamentarians talking about things over and over and over again. And it looks like the law is going back to the drawing board. So we could be waiting for another year or so before it comes about. So I agree with you. It is disheartening.
And the irony is, while the government sleeps, the industry explodes. Because it has over the last 3 years. It's absolutely exploded on the underground. You know, I don't think they have any idea of what's actually happening on the underground with edibles and flour and, you know, and as it stands at the moment, we have more rights with that bill than we do with this supposed bill that's on the table. So actually, the fact that it's taken so long might be a blessing in disguise, because now there's lots of pressure. So really, if this bill comes out, it needs to be dramatically different to the first bill.
I think probably what we need is someone who's actually pro cannabis within Parliament. And then also someone who's actually done their research to actually understand what it is, you know, this plant can offer. Because I think then if you're coming from a point of context, then it makes it a lot more easier to get everybody else involved. I mean, Tito Mboweni is not there anymore. I mean, he resigned recently, and he was a big proponent, as Cyril Posa, who's also our president. So I'm not too sure exactly who else needs to be activated to actually expedite the process. So it's actually quite mind-boggling. In fact, Brett, do you have any insights, secret stories?
I think we should follow the example that they've done in Rwanda and Malawi and in Zambia, where they've created a central cannabis agency. And that spans the divide between agriculture and medicine, and is the issuing body and licenses and the inspectorate. And that's been especially set up to avert this problem where we have to get a permit from SAPRA for hemp cultivation. And if you want to import the seeds, you have to get from from the Department of Agriculture a separate permit, etc. And so the clearest, I think the best step in cannabis reform, besides rewriting the law, would be to set up somebody within the presidency, a special cannabis desk to say, right, guys, let's get the cannabis economy going. What laws need to be changed? Let's change the wording of the Drugs and Drug Trafficking Act. Let's get trade and industry on board. Let's talk to our brothers and sisters in Zimbabwe and elsewhere where we're growing cannabis. And let's form the organization, an organization that's regional and really, because this plant can deliver a lot of economic power to the most marginalized of our people. And, yet it could be, with the wrong legislation, it could be yet another tool of oppression, and government just using it to carry on oppressing people as it has for ages under the old apartheid government and under the new democratic one.
Myself and Linda were, as I mentioned earlier, in Pondoland last week. And we went to visit a guy who has a small grow, sort of 40, 50 plants. He had just built a house for his family. A nice, decent-sized, probably small 2-bedroom house, sadly not built out of hemp, but built from money that he had made from cannabis. This guy was not getting rich. He wasn't sitting on his yacht. He was literally fending for his family and providing for his family. And it was very inspiring. And it made us realize that, all this high-level conversation that's going on and all these big fancy licenses, when you actually get down to the root of it, cannabis needs to help everybody in this country, not just the wealthy. So it was a real eye-opener for us, and to be at the coalface of those conversations and see them again for ourselves. And inspiring to think that, this guy took us through the process of how he growed and how he'd learned, and was literally empowering and uplifting his family through cannabis, no harm to anybody. So the immediacy and the urgency is now there more than ever before. And that's the biggest challenge with this whole situation. There are lots of people who have money who can afford to put one foot in front of the other and take their time. But there are guys on the ground who are subsistence farmers who are using cannabis to survive on a daily basis. And the longer this thing takes to come online and the less they are left out of the conversation, the more of a travesty it becomes. So it was inspiring, but also a reminder of why we have to fight for the use and legalization of farmers' rights till the very bitter end. Hopefully not such a bitter end. Cool, guys. I think that brings us to the end of our CannaSphere show for this week. Nice and short and sweet. Have a great week wherever you are in the world. And we'll be back same time, same place next week. Guys, till next week, take it easy. Ciao.
Love. Bye.
Thank you.